The flashlight beam cut through the darkness and struck her face before she could even lower the window. Officer Vance Harlow rapped his knuckles against the glass, twice, hard, the kind of knock meant to jolt and intimidate. "Well, well," he muttered, "another black woman who thinks she can drive through this town like she belongs here." He did not wait for her to comply. He grabbed the door handle and yanked it hard, rocking the entire car. "Out! Now!" The woman inside did not flinch. Her hands stayed planted on the steering wheel at 10 and 2. Her back straight, her breathing steady and controlled. She was already 3 steps ahead, though he had no idea. Harlow circled to the front, snatched a folded map from the dashboard through the open window, and let it fall deliberately onto the wet pavement, like it was nothing but trash. "You people always have to make things difficult," he said, leaning in close, his forearm on the roof, his voice low and edged with contempt. "Black women in nice cars always think the car makes them equal. It doesn't." She turned her head slowly and met his gaze through the glass. Calm, unhurried, the look of someone who already knew how this would end. He had no clue who he was dealing with. Don't scroll past this story, because the moment she revealed her true identity, the entire precinct felt the ground shift beneath them. Drop your city in the comments right now. If you're not subscribed yet, stay with me. This is only the beginning. Millhaven, Tennessee, a town of roughly 50,000 people, about 45 minutes south of Nashville. The kind of place where the diner on Main Street has been family-run for generations, where the high school football team gets a parade when they win state, where folks still leave their doors unlocked on Sunday mornings because they trust their neighbors. It looks picture perfect from the outside, but behind the sweet tea and front porch waves, the police department had a problem that had been festering for years, hidden like mold behind drywall. You could not see it from the street, but those who had been inside long enough knew exactly where to find it. There had been multiple excessive force complaints in recent years. One involved an elderly black man pulled from his car, just blocks from his home. Another, a young black college student pinned against a wall outside a store for looking like he was casing the place. He had only been buying a drink. Not a single officer faced discipline. Every complaint was reviewed internally and dismissed with the same language. Officer acted within departmental guidelines. Case closed. Remember that. It matters. Officer Vance Harlow was a man in his late 30s with about 10 years on the force. He stood over 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of presence that filled a doorway. His colleagues called him fearless. His supervisors described him as aggressive but effective, and they meant it as praise. He had commendations and a reputation as the kind of officer you wanted beside you on a tough night. But there was another reputation, quieter, not written in official files. He had prior complaints, all from black drivers, all dismissed after internal review. One man said Harlow had pulled him over 7 times in 8 months on the same road, never issuing a single ticket. The man eventually stopped driving that route altogether. Another complaint came from a woman who said he searched her car without consent and dumped her glove compartment contents onto the seat, telling her to clean it up herself. And then there was the body camera. It worked perfectly during routine stops and traffic tickets. But during tense confrontations, the ones involving searches, raised voices, hands on cars, it seemed to develop technical difficulties with suspicious regularity. A glitch here, a dead battery there, a corrupted file. His supervisors noted it, but nothing changed. Until this particular night. This time, the camera would capture everything.
The other person in this story is Judge Naomi Ellison.
She carried herself with the quiet authority of someone who had spent many years making sure the law lived up to its promise. What Harlow saw was a black woman in an expensive car on a quiet street after dark. What he failed to see, what he never bothered to look for, was everything else. Naomi Ellison had grown up in Millhaven. She learned to read in the public library, just blocks from where his cruiser sat that night. She graduated valedictorian from the local high school and left town with a scholarship, and unshakable determination. She put herself through law school, clerked for a federal appellate judge, spent years as a civil rights attorney taking on difficult cases. Then she was appointed to the United States District Court and confirmed by the Senate. For many years, she had served on the federal bench, her decisions cited in courts across the country. That night, she was coming home for the first time in several years. She had been in Memphis accepting an honorary doctorate from a law school that had named its civil rights clinic after her. She wore a charcoal evening gown and low heels. Gospel music played softly on the stereo, her mother's favorite, until the red and blue lights flashed in her rearview mirror. In the passenger seat sat her husband, Andre Ellison, an architect. Quiet and steady, the kind of man who read people well and spoke little. In all their years together, he had never seen her lose her composure in a difficult moment. He was about to watch her hold steady through the hardest one yet. She kept a small burgundy leather wallet in her bag, a habit formed the day she received her judicial credentials. Inside was her identification, gold-embossed seal, photograph, title. The weight of the federal judiciary in her hand. When Harlow first approached, she reached for her bag. He snatched it from the hood before she could open it. That small wallet, sitting face down, held every answer he should have been asking for. But it would sit there ignored, while everything unraveled. The streets were quiet under the streetlights. Harlow sat in his cruiser at the corner, watching cars pass. Then, he saw the Lexus. It moved through the intersection at a careful speed, just under the limit. Clean car, dark color, windows tinted legally, turn signal used properly, nothing out of place. Harlow sat up straighter, shifted into gear, and pulled out to follow. 1 block, no violation. 2 blocks, nothing. 3 blocks. The driver maintained steady speed, signaled for lane changes, drove with the precise awareness of someone who knew they were being followed and had nothing to hide. 4 blocks. Still nothing. 4 blocks is not reasonable suspicion. 4 blocks is not probable cause. 4 blocks is a decision, a deliberate choice by a man who had already decided what he needed to know about the driver before ever seeing their face. At the end of the 4th block, Harlow hit his lights. Red and blue strobed across the quiet street. The Lexus slowed immediately, signaled and eased smoothly to the curb, the way an innocent driver moves when they know every action must be correct and documented. Harlow pulled up behind, waited a moment, then stepped out. He walked slowly, one hand loose at his side, the other near his holster. Not on it, close enough to remind. He approached the driver's window, raised his flashlight, and aimed it straight at her face. She kept both hands on the wheel, back straight, eyes forward until the light hit her. Then she turned her head slowly to face it. Harlow did not introduce himself, did not say good evening, did not explain why he had followed a law-abiding car for 4 blocks. He tapped the glass hard with his knuckles. "Roll it down, all the way." Naomi pressed the button. The window descended completely. "Show license and registration." No please, no explanation, just a command delivered, while the flashlight burned into her face. Naomi turned toward him, her voice calm and measured, the voice that had filled courtrooms for years without ever needing to rise. "Good evening, officer. May I ask why I've been stopped?" Harlow did not answer. "I said license and registration. Don't make me repeat myself." "I heard you," Naomi said. "I'm asking why I was pulled over. That's a lawful question. I'm entitled to an answer." Harlow leaned down, forearm on the roof, bringing his face level with hers. "You want to make this complicated? Fine, we'll make it complicated." Naomi held his gaze. Then she reached slowly, carefully, every movement deliberate, aware it was being watched, toward her bag on the passenger seat. Harlow stepped back instantly, his hand moving to his holster. "Don't reach." "I said don't reach, hands where I can see them." Naomi froze, her hand suspended. Officer, I am reaching for my identification. That's what you asked me to provide. I'm moving slowly and telling you exactly what I'm doing. I didn't tell you to move. I told you to show me your hands. Those are contradictory instructions. Well, lady, I don't care what you think they are. In the passenger seat, Andre had gone very still. Both his hands had come up slowly, unprompted, and rested visibly on the dashboard. It was automatic, muscle memory from a lifetime of moments that teach you your hands must always be visible, or the consequences can be unpredictable. Naomi saw it. She saw her husband's hands raised on the dashboard. That was the moment something settled deep in her chest into a cold, hard place. She placed her hands back on the wheel. "Officer," she said, quieter now, the kind of quiet that is not softness. "I would strongly encourage you to reconsider how you are proceeding." Harlow's jaw tightened. "Is that a threat?" "It is a professional courtesy." He did not know what to do with that. It did not fit the script he was following. He filed it away and pushed forward. "Step out of the vehicle." "On what legal basis am I being asked to exit my vehicle?" "On the basis that I'm a law enforcement officer, and I'm telling you to get out." Naomi looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at Andre. Something passed between them, a quiet, exhausted understanding of two people who had navigated moments like this more times than anyone should have to. She opened the door and stepped out onto the pavement of a street she had played on as a child, in a town where she had grown up, in front of houses whose residents had known her family for decades. She stood straight, shoulders back, evening gown, low heels, both hands visible at her sides. She gave him nothing to use against her. It did not matter. He was already looking for something else. A second cruiser pulled up behind his. Two officers stepped out. Sergeant Malcolm Reed came first, a heavy-set man with close-cropped gray at his temples, the unhurried walk of someone who had learned that arriving calm was half the job. He had a reputation as a fixer, not corrupt, just someone who made messes manageable. His foundational principle: you do not undercut your officers in front of civilians. You present a unified front. You sort disagreements behind closed doors. Whatever it takes to keep the scene controlled and the department protected. That principle had served him well for years. Tonight it would cost him everything. Behind him came Officer Lena Harper, a young black officer with a few years on the force. She was one of the few black officers in the department. She had worked hard to be here. In her time, she had learned that the gap between what the department said it stood for and what actually happened on the street was wide enough to swallow you whole if you were not careful where you stepped. She saw the scene from a distance. A black woman in an evening gown standing with hands visible. A man in the passenger seat with hands raised on the dashboard. A clean, legally parked car on a quiet street. No disturbance. No aggression. No chaos. Something in her stomach tightened. Reed reached Harlow first. "What do we got?" Harlow did not take his eyes off Naomi. "Suspicious vehicle. Driver was non-compliant. Possible connection to vehicle theft activity in the area." Reed looked at the Lexus, at the woman in the gown, at the man with hands up, at the ordinary street. A flicker of doubt crossed his face. Recognition that what he was seeing did not match the description. It lasted a couple of seconds, then vanished. "Your call," Reed said. 2 words. With those 2 words, he handed Harlow a blank check and called it supervision. Officer Harper had come to stand beside him. Close enough to hear. She leaned in, voice barely above a whisper. "Sarge," she asked why she was stopped. "That's not non-compliance. Shouldn't we at least run her plates before we go any further?" Reed turned his head slowly. "You're here to back him up, not question him." Harper closed her mouth. She stood off to the side, arms crossed, then uncrossed, eyes moving between them. She said nothing. That silence would stay with her longest. Harlow turned back to Naomi. "Hands on the hood. Spread your feet." Naomi did not move immediately. "Officer, I have asked twice for the legal basis of this detention. I have not received an answer. I am a... Hands on the hood. Each word its own sentence, its own small act of force. Naomi placed her hands on the hood of her own car. The metal was cool under her palms. She spread her feet as instructed. She stood there, composed, upright, entirely still, while Vance Harlow patted her down on a public street in the town where she had grown up. The search was rough. Not violent, but rough. The kind of rough that has nothing to do with finding something and everything to do with making a point. From her bag, Harlow produced the burgundy wallet. He flipped it open, glanced at the driver's license, glanced at the name and dropped it on the hood beside her hands like it meant nothing. Then his fingers found the credential holder tucked behind it. Small, dark leather, gold edging just visible. He turned it over once in his hand, turned it over again, and set it face down on the hood. He did not open it. He did not read it. He had already decided everything he needed to know about this woman, and nothing inside a leather case was going to change his mind. That credential holder, sitting face down inches from his fingers. The answer to every question he should have been asking. And he set it down and walked away from it. "You match a description," Harlow said. "Female suspect connected to a vehicle theft operation active in this area." Naomi turned her head slightly. "What description?" "Black female, dark vehicle." The silence that followed had weight. The kind that presses against the chest. "That is not a description, officer," Naomi said, her voice still entirely level. "That is a demographic." Harlow's jaw tightened. He said nothing. From the Lexus." Andre pushed open the passenger door and stepped out. His voice was controlled but tight. "That is my wife. She has done nothing." Reed was in front of him before he finished. One hand up, body angled to block. "Back in the vehicle, sir. Right now." "She hasn't done anything, sir." "Back in the vehicle. This is your one warning." Andre looked at Naomi. She gave him the smallest shake of her head. Not submission. Strategy. He stopped. He stood beside the open door, hands visible, watching. Harper watched too, and 2 houses down, in a car parked against the curb with its engine off. A young man named Jamal had his phone out and was recording everything. Then Harlow reached for his handcuffs. The click of the metal was the loudest sound on the street. The handcuffs went on behind her back, tight, tighter than necessary, the kind of tight that is not about security. It is about sending a message. It is about making sure the person wearing them understands exactly where they stand and who is deciding that for them. Naomi did not make a sound. She stood straight as the metal closed around her wrists, shoulders back, chin level, evening gown, low heels on the pavement of a street where she had learned to ride a bicycle, where she had walked to school every morning, where her grandmother had hung laundry in the backyard and hummed hymns while she worked. She stood there and did not make a sound. Did. Harlow turned her toward the cruiser. His hand on her elbow was firm, steering, the grip of a man reminding you that he decides where you go. "I strongly advise you," Naomi said, her voice carrying the same low, precise, unmoved register it had held the entire encounter, "to reconsider what you are doing right now. You already said that, and you didn't listen the first time." Harlow stopped walking and turned his head toward her. "Is that a threat, ma'am?" "It is the second professional courtesy I have extended to you tonight." She paused. "I would not expect a third." He did not know what to do with that. The phrase landed wrong, like a word in a language he almost understood, but not quite. He filed it away again, made nothing of it again, and kept moving. Professional courtesy. Lawyers use that phrase with other lawyers. Judges use it with other judges. It is the language of people who occupy the same professional world. A shorthand, a signal, a door left open before the conversation becomes something more formal and considerably more consequential. Vance Harlow had no idea what door had just been left open for him. He pushed it shut and kept walking. From the passenger side of the Lexus, Andre watched his wife being guided toward the back of a police cruiser with her hands cuffed behind her. His face did not collapse. It did not crumble, but something in it changed. Some small tightening around the eyes, some adjustment in the set of his jaw. The way a face changes when it absorbs something it has been bracing for and still is not prepared for when it arrives. He took one step forward. Reed was there immediately. "Sir, I will not ask you again. That is my wife." Andre's voice was quiet and very controlled. "She has complied with every single thing you have asked. She has not raised her voice. She has not threatened anyone. She has done nothing. Sir, I am telling you as clearly as I know how that you are making a mistake." Reed looked at him for a moment. Something passed through his expression, perhaps the beginning of doubt, and then it closed off, clean and complete. "Step back to the vehicle, or you'll be joining her." Andre stepped back. He stood beside the open door, hands visible, and watched. Down the block on the covered porch of a brick house with a flower box under the window, an elderly woman had come outside. She was small, with white hair, wearing a housecoat and slippers. The way a person looks when they step outside, not because they plan to, but because something pulled them there. She stood on her porch with her arms folded and watched in silence. Her name was Clara Thompson. She had lived on that street for decades. She had watched this street change and stay the same. She had watched young black families move in and then slowly be priced out. She had watched patrol cars idle at the corner on Friday nights for no reason or anyone ever officially explained. She had watched and watched for decades. She looked at Naomi. Naomi, being guided toward the cruiser, turned her head and saw the old woman on the porch. Their eyes met. Mrs. Thompson shook her head slowly once. The way someone shakes their head not in shock, but in a recognition so deep and so old it lives in the bones. Not, "I can't believe this is happening," but, "Of course it is. Of course. This town never changed. It just learned better wallpaper." That look, that exhausted, ancient, bone-deep recognition, was the thing that almost broke Naomi's composure. Not the handcuffs, not the rough search, not the credential holder sitting face down on the hood of her car. Not even seeing Andre's hands go up. It was that look from that woman on that porch, because it meant this was not new. It was not an aberration. It was a continuation, a long, unbroken line stretching back decades, and Naomi was simply the latest point on it, just with a different dress and a different car, and the same result. She held Mrs. Thompson's gaze for a moment. Then she looked forward again, and kept walking, and she did not let a single thing show on her face. The back door of the cruiser opened. No hand on her head, no care about the doorframe. Harlow guided her in with a firm push, not brutal but deliberate, a push that said what words did not need to. The door slammed shut. Through the rear window. Naomi sat perfectly still, hands cuffed behind her back, pressing the evening gown against the seat at an angle that would leave creases in the fabric. She did not look at Harlow. She did not look at Reed. She did not look at the neighbors who had come out now, several of them standing on their lawns in the evening watching. She looked straight ahead, patient, still, the way someone sits when they have been in far more important rooms than the back of a patrol car, and know with absolute certainty that the world is about to catch up. Jamal, 2 houses down, was still recording. Andre walked back to the Lexus. He sat down. He closed the door. He picked up his phone. He made one call. He did not call a lawyer. He did not call a journalist. He did not call anyone whose first instinct would be to make noise. He called a single number he had memorized years ago, that he had hoped he would never need, and that he had always known someday he would. The line connected quickly. He spoke briefly, calm, precise. Everything Harlow's cruiser was already pulling away from the curb. Andre started the engine and followed. What that brief phone call set in motion was already beyond anything Vance Harlow could stop or outrun. He just did not know it yet. He was driving toward the precinct, feeling like a man who had just won something. He had never been more wrong in his life. The Millhaven Police Department processed people through its booking area regularly. Most came in loud with fear, loud with anger, loud with the particular desperation of people who understood that the system they were entering did not have their interests anywhere near the top of its priority list. Loud because loudness was sometimes the only tool available. Judge Naomi Ellison came in quiet. They brought her through the side entrance. The booking area was exactly what every booking area in every mid-size American police department looks like. Fluorescent lights that give everyone's skin the color of old paper, the smell of burnt coffee and industrial floor cleaner, a row of plastic chairs bolted to the wall, and a processing desk that has seen too much to be surprised by anything. The booking officer on duty that night was Walter Finch. He had been behind the booking desk for many years, a man who prided himself on having seen everything and being rattled by nothing. He was about to be rattled. He directed Naomi to the fingerprinting station. She complied without a word. Left hand, right hand, each finger individually. The ink was cold against her skin. Then the photograph, front-facing, then profile. The camera flash reflecting off the fabric of her evening gown in a way that Finch found, in some part of his mind he could not fully articulate, deeply wrong. This did not look right. The gown, the low heels, the composed face, the complete absence of any of the behavioral signals he associated with someone who had done something worth being arrested. None of it looked right. He sat down at his desk and began entering the information into the system. Name, date of birth, address. He typed the name. He hit enter, and then he stopped. His fingers went completely still above the keyboard. The screen had populated with a result, a flag, a marker that the system attached to certain individuals whose presence in a booking facility required immediate notification of a supervising officer. The flag was red. The text beside it read Federal Judicial Officer, Article 3, Appointment, Middle District of Tennessee. Finch looked at the screen. He looked at Naomi sitting in the plastic chair against the wall with her hands folded in her lap, back straight, face entirely composed. He looked at the screen again. His hands moved to the keyboard and he continued typing, faster now, eyes down. And he did not look at Naomi again for the remainder of the process. He did not say anything. He did not call for a supervisor. He did not do the thing that every instinct and every procedure told him he should do immediately. He chose silence. He chose it quickly, the way people choose the easiest available option when they are frightened, and the correct option requires courage. They have not yet decided they have. He would spend a long time thinking about that choice afterward, but by then it would already be too late to unmake it. Meanwhile, down the hall, in the break room, Vance Harlow sat down across from Malcolm Reed and picked up a pen. The incident report was a standard departmental form. Harlow had filled out hundreds of them. He knew exactly which words worked and which ones did not. He knew the language the system responded to, the phrasing that moved through review without friction, the specific vocabulary of justification that had protected him before and that he had every reason to believe would protect him again. He wrote, "Observed suspicious vehicle operating in residential area in the evening. Vehicle matched general descriptions circulated in connection with ongoing vehicle theft activity in the district. Driver was initially non-compliant with lawful orders. Subject made furtive movement toward bag positioned on passenger seat before being instructed to cease. Driver became verbally confrontational during the course of the stop. Furtive movement, non-compliant, verbally confrontational. 3 phrases, 3 lies, each one chosen with the precision of a man who understood exactly what he was doing. The footage from his body camera, the camera that for once had not malfunctioned, that had recorded every second from the moment he hit his lights to the moment Naomi was placed in the back of the cruiser, sat in the system, uploaded automatically, contradicting every single word of that report in real time. Harlow did not think about that. The camera had always malfunctioned before when it mattered. Tonight would be no different, or if it was different, the report would be sufficient. The report had always been sufficient. Reed read it when Harlow slid it across the table. Read it the way a man reads something he had already decided to agree with before the first word. No pause. No questions. No raised eyebrows at phrases that described a version of events so different from what he had personally witnessed that agreeing to them required a specific and deliberate act of willful blindness. He picked up his pen, signed the bottom. Supervisor endorsement. Done. 2 men, 1 lie. Official paper stamped with the full authority of the Millhaven Police Department. Naomi was placed in a holding cell. Metal bench, concrete walls, a drain in the center of the floor. A light overhead that never turned off. She sat down, smoothed the fabric of her evening gown across her knees as best she could, folded her hands in her lap, and sat. She did not pace. She did not pound the door. She did not demand a lawyer, or ask for a phone call or raise her voice in any way. She sat the way she sat on the bench in her courtroom, with the patient, anchored stillness of a person who understood that the truth was already in the room, already in the system, already beyond anyone's ability to suppress. She just had to wait for it to surface. Down the hall in the waiting area, Andre walked through the front door. He did not go to the desk. He walked directly to the officer on duty and said quietly and clearly, "I need your watch commander, right now." The officer looked up. "Sir, the watch commander is currently—" "Make them available," Andre said, "because in a short time, this department is going to wish very much that someone with authority had spoken to me first." He sat down in a plastic chair, crossed his legs, folded his hands, and waited. Harlow was laughing at something in the break room. Reed was signing off on a second form. Harper was sitting alone in her cruiser in the parking lot, engine off, staring at the steering wheel, replaying every second of the stop in the particular way the mind replays things it knows were wrong. Then the phone at the front desk rang. The officer at the front desk, a young man named Logan Brooks with a couple of years on the job. The kind of young officer who still believed in the version of things he had been told in the academy, picked up. His voice had the automatic, slightly bored cadence of someone who had answered this line many times and expected it to be a noise complaint or a lost dog or someone calling about parking permits. Millhaven PD, front desk, Officer Brooks. The voice on the other end was not calling about parking permits. It was a woman's voice, clipped, precise, the specific register of someone who speaks in professional environments for a living and has long since stopped softening the edges of her words for the comfort of the listener. "This is Deputy U.S. Marshal Rebecca Hale, Federal Judicial Security Division, Nashville, Field Office. I am calling regarding the individual your department took into custody earlier this evening at the intersection of Decatur Avenue and Sycamore Lane in Millhaven. I need you to confirm that individual's current status, and I need your commanding officer on this line within the next minute and a half. This is not a request." Logan Brooks's pen stopped moving. He looked at the notepad in front of him, where he had written the first 3 words, Deputy U.S. Marshal, and then stopped writing because his hand had stopped working properly. "I'm sorry," he said. "Could you repeat?" "Deputy U.S. Marshal Rebecca Hale, Federal Judicial Security Division. The individual your officers detained tonight is a sitting federal judge. Her name is the Honorable Naomi Ellison, United States District Court, Middle District of Tennessee. I need confirmation of her status, and I need your commanding officer. 1.5 minutes, Officer Brooks. The clock started when you picked up the phone." Logan put the call on hold. He stood up. His chair scraped the linoleum floor with a sound that echoed through the quiet lobby, like a small explosion. In the waiting area, Andre looked up from the chair where he had been sitting. He took one look at Logan Brooks's face, at the specific shade of pale it had gone, at the way the young officer's eyes had widened and then immediately tried to unwiden, at the slight unsteadiness in the way he rose from his chair. And Andre understood that the call had come through. He said nothing. He simply watched. Logan walked toward the hallway, not quite running. The particular pace of someone who needs to move very fast and has decided that running would reveal too much. He pushed through the door at the end of the lobby, turned left, walked the length of the corridor past the booking desk where Walter Finch was staring at his own hands, past the vending machine that hummed indifferently, past the bulletin board with its outdated community notices, all the way to the break room at the end. He pushed open the door. Vance Harlow was sitting at the folding table with his feet crossed at the ankle and a half-eaten bag of chips in front of him. Malcolm Reed was across from him, jacket off, reading something on his phone. Two men at the comfortable end of a shift they believed had gone well. Logan Brooks looked at both of them. "The woman you brought in tonight." Harlow looked up, mildly annoyed at the interruption. "What about her?" Logan swallowed, looked at Reed, looked back at Harlow. "She's a federal judge." The break room went silent. Not quiet, silent. The particular quality of silence that is not simply the absence of sound, but the sudden removal of all the air from a space. The kind of silence that has a physical weight you feel against your skin. Reed's coffee cup stopped moving halfway to his mouth. It hovered there for a full moment before he set it down. Harlow blinked. Once, twice, his feet uncrossed. "That's not—" He stopped, started again. "That's not right. U.S. Marshals Federal Judicial Security Division is on hold at the front desk right now asking for the commanding officer," Logan said. His voice was admirably steady for a man who felt like the floor was changing its relationship to his feet. "So, I'd say it's very right." Reed stood up. He did not look at Harlow. He did not say a single word to the man sitting across from him, who had, with his full endorsement, placed a United States federal judge in handcuffs earlier that evening based on nothing. He simply stood, straightened his shirt, and walked out of the break room. Harlow sat at the table alone. The chips were in front of him. The report he had written was in the system. The body camera footage was in the system. The lie was in the system. Everything was in the system. And the system had just rung the front desk and identified itself. And it was not going to be managed, or smoothed over, or filed away. For the first time that night, possibly for the first time in a long time, Vance Harlow's face did something it had not done before. It showed fear. Reed moved fast. Down the hallway past the booking desk, past the vending machine, all the way to the holding area at the back of the building. He looked through the narrow window of the cell. Naomi Ellison was sitting exactly where they had left her, hands folded in her lap. Back straight, evening gown, completely still. The same woman who had stood on Decatur Avenue with cuffs on her wrists and not let a single thing show. She had not moved. She had not paced. She looked through that narrow window, less like a woman who had been wrongfully detained, and more like a woman who had been waiting patiently, deliberately, with the particular confidence of someone who knows the ending of the story before the other people in it have figured out what story they are in. Reed opened the door. His mouth moved before the rest of him caught up. "Judge Ellison, I'm so—" Naomi stood slowly, the way she did everything. She smoothed the fabric of her gown. She straightened to her full height. She looked at Malcolm Reed with the level, unhurried gaze of a woman who had been on the bench for many years and had looked at a great many people across a great many rooms and knew exactly what accountability looked like and what it did not. "You will address me as Your Honor," Reed swallowed. "And I would like my credential holder, please." A pause, precise and deliberate. "The one your officer chose not to open." That sentence, that one sentence, landed in the corridor of the Millhaven Police Department with the quiet, irreversible weight of a gavel coming down. The credential holder, sitting on the hood of her car in Harlow's hands, turned over once, set face down, walked away from. The answer had been there the entire time, right there, inches from his fingers. And he had set it down because he had already decided he did not need to look. Reed retrieved her belongings, wallet, phone, keys, the small burgundy credential holder. His hands were shaking when he handed them to her. She opened it herself, held it up not toward Reed but toward the camera mounted in the corner of the hallway, the one that had been recording since she walked through the door. Inside, visible to that camera, and to every set of eyes that would later review the footage, a gold embossed identification card, the seal of the United States District Court, a photograph, a name, a title, an appointment confirmed by the President and ratified by the Senate. For the record, Naomi said quietly. She closed the wallet, put it back in her bag where it belonged, and walked out. Naomi walked out of the holding area and into the hallway, and the hallway felt different than it had when they brought her in. Not physically. The fluorescent lights were the same. The linoleum was the same. The smell of burnt coffee and floor cleaner had not changed in the time she had been inside this building. Everything was exactly as it had been. But something had shifted in the air, the way air shifts in a courtroom, when the verdict has been read and everyone in the room is still sitting in the same seats, but occupying an entirely different moment than the one they were in moments before. Andre was standing at the end of the hallway. He had been escorted back by Logan Brooks, once the watch commander, a heavy-set man named Lieutenant Victor Lang, who had arrived at the precinct in civilian clothes and an expression of barely contained alarm, had finally come out to the waiting area and understood in moments what his department had done. Andre stood at the end of the hallway, and when Naomi came through the door, he did not move toward her immediately. He simply looked at her, took her in. The way you look at someone after something has happened that you cannot undo and cannot fully process and can only absorb slowly over time, in increments your nervous system can handle. Then he crossed the hallway and took her hand. She let him. They stood there for a moment. No words, just the particular silence of two people who have been through something together and do not need language for it yet. Then Naomi turned. Harlow was standing at the far end of the corridor. He had not left. Reed had told him to stay put, and he had stayed standing against the wall, near the break room door, with his arms at his sides, and his face doing something it had not done at any point during the hours preceding this moment. It was open, undefended, the swagger was gone, the certainty was gone. The absolute conviction of a man who had never once been seriously challenged on anything he had done in his years of patrol, all of it gone, replaced by something raw and unprocessed. And if you were being precise about it, frightened. Naomi walked toward him. She did not move fast. She never moved fast. She crossed the length of the corridor with the same measured pace she had maintained from the moment he first tapped on her window on Decatur Avenue, and she stopped in front of him. Close. Not aggressive close, but the kind of close a judge leans forward on the bench when they want to make certain the person they are addressing cannot look anywhere else. Harlow could not look anywhere else. "Officer Harlow," she said. He did not speak. His mouth opened slightly and then closed. "You told me I was nobody." She said it the way you state a matter of established fact. No heat, no trembling, no performance of injury, just the clean, level delivery of a woman reading a sentence back from the record. "You told me that black women don't sit when you're talking to them. You told me that out here in your town, I was nobody. You have always been nobody." The hallway was completely still. Logan Brooks, standing near the booking desk, did not breathe. Walter Finch at his desk was staring at his hands. Lieutenant Lang, halfway down the corridor, had gone entirely still. Naomi continued, "I have spent many years on the federal bench. I have presided over cases that determine the civil rights of thousands of people in this state. I was confirmed by the United States Senate. I grew up blocks from where you stopped my car tonight." She paused, not for effect, to let the weight of each sentence settle where it needed to settle. "I was a child in this town before you were a police officer in it." Harlow said nothing. What was there to say? There was no version of this moment in which words helped him. "You looked at my credential holder," Naomi said. "You held it in your hands, you turned it over once, and you set it down face down on the hood of my car and walked away because you had already decided everything you needed to know about me." She let that sit for a few seconds. "Write that in your next report." She held his gaze for one final moment. Not with anger, not with triumph, but with the steady, unblinking clarity of a woman who had just demonstrated in the most unambiguous possible terms the precise cost of deciding you already know everything before you've looked at the evidence. Then she turned. Andre fell into step beside her, shoulder to shoulder. They walked the length of the corridor together, past Logan Brooks, past the booking desk, past Walter Finch, who kept his eyes down, through the lobby, past the plastic chairs in the waiting area, and out through the front door of the Millhaven Police Department into the night. The air outside was cool and damp and smelled like cut grass and distant rain. Lena Harper was standing near the corner of the building. She had come inside at some point. No one was entirely sure when, and she was standing there in the shadow, just beyond the reach of the entrance light, still in uniform, arms crossed, watching. Naomi saw her. She stopped. She looked at Harper for a long moment. The young officer met her gaze. Her face carried everything she had not said on Decatur Avenue. The hesitation, the swallowed objection, the whispered question that Reed had shut down in 2 words. All of it was right there, readable and unresolved. Naomi nodded. Once, small, the kind of nod that is not forgiveness and is not condemnation. It is simply, I see you. I know you saw it. What you do with that is yours to decide. Harper nodded back. Then Naomi and Andre walked to their car. By the time they reached the Lexus, Jamal's video had already been shared widely. In the first hour after posting, it reached hundreds of thousands of views. By morning, it would cross 1 million. By the time the sun came up over Millhaven, every television station in the state would be running the same footage on a loop. A woman in an evening gown being handcuffed on a residential street, while an old woman on a porch shook her head slowly at something she had seen too many times to count. Andre started the engine. They drove in silence. No music, no phone calls. Just the quiet streets of Millhaven at night. The same streets Naomi had navigated as a child. The same intersections and storefronts and left turns that the body remembers even after decades away. They passed Decatur Avenue. Naomi looked out the window at the spot where the cruiser's lights had first appeared in her rearview mirror. The pavement was empty now. No lights, no offices, just an ordinary street on an ordinary night that had been neither ordinary nor unremarkable for the people who had lived through it. Andre drove. After a while he said, You okay? Naomi kept her eyes on the window. Ask me again on Monday, Andre, she said. He did not push. He understood. He reached over and took her hand. She let him keep it. They drove the rest of the way home in silence. And that silence held everything that winning does not fix and vindication does not reach. The exhaustion that does not lift, just because the outcome was right. The wound that stays open, even after justice has technically been served, because it should never have happened. That simple, that devastating. It should never have happened. Deputy Inspector Harlan Crow arrived at the Millhaven Police Department the following morning. He drove himself. No partner, no assistant. He carried a single briefcase and wore a gray suit and had the particular quality of stillness that belongs to people who have spent years in rooms where the truth was being deliberately hidden from them and have become very good at finding it anyway. Harlan Crow had been with the department's Internal Affairs Division for many years. In that time, he had investigated numerous officers. Of those, many had faced disciplinary action ranging from mandatory retraining to termination. He was not popular in the building. He was not meant to be. His job was not to be liked. His job was to follow the evidence wherever it went, regardless of whose name was at the end of the trail, regardless of how many years they had on the force, or how many commendations were on their wall, or how uncomfortable the destination made the people responsible for making decisions. Chief Monica Harlan had called him early that morning. The conversation was brief. By the end of it, Harlan Crow had everything he needed to begin. He started with the body camera footage. Harlow's camera had uploaded automatically to the departmental server the previous night. as required by protocol. Over 26 minutes of uninterrupted, unedited footage. For once, for the first time in the documented history of Vance Harlow's confrontational stops, the camera had not malfunctioned. Harlan Crow watched it once through without stopping. Then he watched it again, this time with Harlow's incident report open on the desk beside him, moving through each claim line by line. The report stated the driver made a furtive movement toward a bag positioned on the passenger seat. The footage showed a woman with both hands on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, who reached slowly with a verbal announcement of exactly what she was doing and why toward a bag on the seat beside her after being asked for identification. The movement lasted only a couple of seconds and was preceded by the words, "I am reaching for my identification." There was nothing furtive about it. There was nothing about it that resembled the written description in any way that a reasonable person watching the footage could reconcile. The report stated the driver was initially non-compliant with lawful orders. The footage showed a woman who kept her hands visible, answered every question put to her, complied with every physical instruction given to her, exited the vehicle when directed, placed her hands on the hood when directed, and did not raise her voice at any point during the entire encounter. The word non-compliant appeared in the report multiple times. The footage did not support it once. The report stated the driver became verbally confrontational during the course of the stop. The footage showed a woman who asked twice in a measured and entirely lawful manner why she had been stopped. She had used the phrases "professional courtesy" and "I strongly advise you to reconsider." Language that Harlan Crow recognized immediately for what it was. Language that Harlow had apparently not recognized at all. 3 claims, 3 lies, all of them on official departmental paper, all of them signed by a supervising officer. Harlan Crow pulled the dispatch logs next. He searched for any BOLO issued for a vehicle matching the description of Naomi's Lexus in the hours preceding the stop. He searched for any reported vehicle thefts in the district that week involving a dark-colored luxury sedan. He cross-referenced with the county sheriff's database and the state highway patrol incident log. Nothing. No BOLO, no reported theft, no dispatch communication of any kind that connected Vance Harlow's decision to follow that specific car on that specific street to anything other than his own unilateral judgment. The description he had given, black female, dark vehicle, had not come from a report. It had not come from dispatch. It had come from nowhere. He had constructed it after the fact to justify a stop he had made for reasons he either could not or would not articulate honestly. Harlan Crow wrote that down. Then, Officer Lena Harper knocked on the door of the conference room where Harlan Crow had set up his workspace. She came alone. No union representative, no attorney, just her, a written statement she had prepared that morning, and the face of someone who had not slept and had spent the sleepless hours, deciding that the cost of continued silence was higher than the cost of speaking. She sat down. She confirmed everything the footage showed. She described the moment on Decatur Avenue when she had whispered to Reed that they should run the plates first. She recounted his exact response. "You're here to back him up, not question him," in a flat, precise voice that made it clear she had replayed those words many times since they were spoken. Then she went further. "This wasn't the first time," she said. Harlan Crow leaned forward. She described several other stops she had either witnessed directly or heard about from officers who had been present. All involved black drivers. All followed the same pattern. No clear violation. Aggressive initial contact. Justifications that did not hold up to scrutiny. No complaints filed because, as one driver had told Harper, afterward in a gas station parking lot, "What's the point? Who's going to listen?" One of those drivers had been a teacher on her way to a parent-teacher conference. Another had been a retired postal worker walking to his parked car. None of them had come forward. None of them had a credential holder in their bag. None of them had a husband who knew the number for the Federal Judicial Security Division. "Why didn't you report any of this before?" Harlan Crow asked. Harper looked at her hands. She was quiet for a moment. When she looked up, her voice was steady, but there was something unsteady underneath it. Because I'm a black woman in a department where Vance Harlow has years of experience and commendations, and I have far less time on the force, and the knowledge that if I'm the one who makes noise, I'm the one who gets managed out. She paused. I told myself I was reading it wrong, that maybe he was just intense, that it was not what I thought it was. She folded her hands on the table. I was not reading it wrong. I knew it then. I know it now. I just did not want to be the one. Harlan Crow wrote it all down. He did not judge her. Judgment was not his job. Documentation was. He interviewed Reed that afternoon. Reed deflected with the practiced ease of a man who had been deflecting for years. I trusted my officer's assessment. I was there in a support capacity. I was not present for the initial contact. Harlan Crow let him talk. Then he opened his file and read back, line by line, everything the footage showed Reed doing. The your call, the physical redirection, the shutdown of Harper's question, the signature at the bottom of the false report. At what point, Harlan Crow said, closing the file, did your support capacity include questioning anything? Reed stared at the table. He had no answer. There was no answer. He had never intended to question anything. That was the whole point. He interviewed Harlow last. Harlow arrived with his union representative and sat down with his arms crossed, and the residual posture of a man who still believed, on some stubborn fundamental level, that he had operated within his authority, and would be found to have done so. Harlan Crow dismantled that belief methodically, piece by piece, over the course of an hour and a half, using nothing but the footage, the dispatch logs, and the incident report that Harlow himself had written. The last thing Harlow said in that room before the union representative put a hand on his arm and advised him to stop talking was this: I didn't know who she was. Harlan Crow looked at him for a moment. Then he wrote it down. I know, he said. That's exactly the problem. The report took several days. When it was finished, it was dozens of pages long. Every page pointed in the same direction, and on a morning later that week, it landed on Chief Monica Harlan's desk, and she read every word of it, and then she read it again, and when she was done, she sat very still for a long time in her office with the door closed. Then she picked up the phone. The meeting with Vance Harlow lasted only a few minutes. Chief Monica Harlan sat on one side of the table. Deputy Inspector Harlan Crow sat beside her. Harlow sat across from them, with his union representative, a man named Victor Fisk, who had defended many officers in disciplinary proceedings over the years, and who sat through this particular meeting saying almost nothing, because there was almost nothing to say. Harlan kept it short. She was not a woman who believed that length conveyed seriousness. Seriousness conveyed seriousness. Terminated, she said. Effective immediately. Badge and service weapon on the table before you leave this room. No appeal recommendation, no transfer consideration, no negotiated resignation. Harlow looked at her, then at Harlan Crow, then at Victor Fisk, who gave him a small, almost imperceptible shake of the head that meant there is no version of this that goes differently. Harlow reached up, unclipped his badge, set it on the table. The sound it made against the wood was small and very final. He placed his service weapon beside it, stood up, straightened his shirt from habit. He walked out of the room without speaking. The hallway was empty. He passed the break room where he had written the report. He passed the booking desk where Walter Finch kept his eyes on his keyboard. He passed the bulletin board. He pushed through the front door of the Mill Haven Police Department for the last time and stepped out into the morning. 2 news vans were parked across the street. He did not stop, did not speak. He walked to his personal vehicle, got in, and sat behind the wheel. He sat there for a long time without starting the engine, thinking about a sentence he had spoken on a residential street on an evening to a woman in an evening gown. You are nobody. You have always been nobody. He had said it to tell her something about herself. It had turned out to say something about him. He started the engine and drove away, and the Millhaven Police Department did not watch him go. Reed came next, a lengthy suspension without pay. Permanent demotion from sergeant to patrol officer, supervisory authority revoked for the duration of his employment. His career was not over, but the version of it he had constructed, the comfortable architecture of a man who had learned to make problems disappear and call it leadership. That version was finished. He signed the paperwork without a word and left through the back entrance, where there were no cameras and no reporters and no one to witness a man carrying the full weight of everything he had chosen not to do. Walter Finch, the booking officer who had seen the flag on his screen and chosen silence, received a formal written reprimand and mandatory retraining. It was the least severe consequence of the night. It was not a small thing to him. The civil rights lawsuit came fast. Naomi and Andre filed under federal law against the city of Millhaven, Officer Vance Harlow and Sergeant Malcolm Reed within weeks of the incident. The city's legal team reviewed the body camera footage, the dispatch logs, the internal affairs report, and the video that had now been viewed by millions of people and reached the only conclusion available to people looking honestly at that evidence. The case settled in a few months. The amount was not disclosed, but the settlement was not the point. The settlement included a consent decree, and the consent decree had teeth that money alone could never grow. Mandatory implicit bias training for every officer every year without exception. Revised stop and detention protocols requiring documented, reasonable suspicion before any traffic stop, with supervisory review within a day of every stop that resulted in detention. An independent civilian oversight board with genuine investigative authority and the power to recommend discipline. An early warning system flagging any officer with multiple complaints within a rolling year for mandatory review before the next complaint had to become a headline before anyone paid attention to the pattern. Structural change, not just punishment. Prevention. The difference between those two things was the difference between treating a symptom and addressing the condition that kept producing it. Lena Harper was not disciplined. Harlan Crow's report noted her cooperation in full and cited her testimony as a material contribution to the investigation's findings. The report also noted carefully and on the record that Officer Harper had attempted to raise a concern at the scene and had been shut down by a superior officer, and that this fact should be considered in any departmental evaluation of her conduct. She transferred to the community policing unit within a couple of months. Several months after that, she was appointed as one of the departmental liaisons to the new Civilian Oversight Board, sitting at the table where complaints were heard, where patterns were examined, where the question of what had happened to the teacher and the retired postal worker could finally be asked by people with the authority to expect an answer. The officer who had been too junior to say anything on a street that evening was now in the room where decisions were made. It did not erase Decatur Avenue. Nothing could do that, but it was a beginning. And then there was Mrs. Clara Thompson, the woman on the porch, elderly, with decades on that street. She had written a letter, handwritten 2 pages, delivered through the law office of one of Naomi's former clerks, that arrived on Naomi's desk in Nashville a few weeks after the incident. The letter said many things, but the line that Naomi read 3 times, that she folded the letter back on and sat with for a long while, was this: "I have been watching them do this on this street for decades. You are the first one they could not bury. I hope you know what that means to those of us whose names nobody ever learned." Naomi wrote back. The correspondence continued for months. Naomi Ellison returned to the bench the Monday following the settlement. She put on her robe in the anteroom of her courtroom, the way she had done countless times. She picked up her gavel. She straightened her collar. Before she walked through the door, she opened her bag, took out the small burgundy wallet, looked at the photograph on the credential card, her face, her name, her title. for a moment. Then she put it back in the same pocket where it always belonged. She walked into the courtroom. Everyone rose. "Be seated," she said. The first case on her docket that morning was a civil rights matter. A black man in Memphis pulled over multiple times in a short period on the same road. No citations ever issued, no complaints filed because he told his attorney, "Who is going to listen to me?" She listened. She had always listened. That was the job. That had always been the job. But here is what stays with you long after the settlement and the consent decree and the termination and all the structural language that tries to build walls around something that keeps finding new doors. The system did not protect Naomi Ellison on Decatur Avenue that night. Her title protected her. Andre's phone call protected her. The camera that finally did not malfunction protected her. The young man in a parked car who happened to have his phone out protected her. Take away any one of those things, anyone, and this story ends in silence. A woman drives home from the precinct, files a complaint that gets reviewed internally and dismissed, tells a few people, is not believed or is believed, and nothing changes. And the next night on the same street, the lights flash again for someone who does not have a credential holder in their bag. Someone whose husband does not have that number memorized, someone whose neighbor is not recording, someone who will carry what happened to them in a place that has no name and no remedy and no detailed report. That person is out there tonight on some quiet street in some town with nice postcards and a police department that reviews its own complaints. That is the part that does not end when the gavel comes down. That is the part that has to stay with us. Dignity is not something you earn with a title or a credential or a confirmation vote. It is something every person carries from the moment they draw breath to the moment they stop. The system failed Naomi Ellison. Her title saved her. And somewhere tonight, someone without that title is on the same road with no camera, no call, and no one watching. Justice that only works for the credentialed is not justice. It is a waiting room. The real work is making sure no one has to keep waiting. If this story left something in your chest that will not sit still, that is the point. Drop your city in the comments. Tell me what you're thinking. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're not subscribed yet, you've been here for this journey. You already know if this is the kind of storytelling that matters to you.